Hey there, internet friends. Trevor Starkey here, wishing you a happy new year. Now that 2017 is behind us, it is time to give you my top 10 games of 2017. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in to any of the Game of the Year coverage that I've done for the last week or so. It's been a lot of fun. I've written more probably in the last week and a half than I really have all year because I've been doing more of the video stuff, but it's been great to hop back into that, and yeah, I've had a great time putting all this stuff together. So I didn't do any ties this year. I didn't cheat anything, so we have 10 games that were my favorite games for 2017. So without further ado, let's dive in. Number 10, we have Battle Chef Brigade. After playing this game at PAX West, I figured I'd at least pick it up to support my friends over at Adult Swim Games, but I didn't know if I'd really dive into the game. It didn't really strike me as something that was particularly me, especially as it is so heavily like anime and match 3, since those are such like huge elements of the game. I'm only still just getting into anime, and I really haven't played a match 3 game since Bejeweled on like an old flip phone circa 2005. But I picked it up on the Switch and just everything clicked. The game, if you are unfamiliar, is basically anime Iron Chef with hack and slash and match 3 gameplay. You play as Mina, and she basically is an aspiring Battle Chef Brigadier, and the Battle Chef Brigade in this universe fights monsters and then turns the ingredients that they get from those monsters into delicious food. And they do it a la like an Iron Chef type of setup. So you've got like special ingredients, and you've got the judges that like certain kinds of things in their food, and all that stuff. And the gameplay element is you go and hack and slash the monsters to get the ingredients, and then you take the ingredients back into the kitchen and turn into a match 3 game for the cooking element of the game. And you're basically matching up fire or water or earth elements, matching up 3 of those to level up the gem into like a level 2 or then a level 3 gem, and the higher the level of the gem, the higher score you're going to get for the meal. And so you are pitted up against an opponent chef, and you basically both have the same amount of time to make the ingredients and stuff, to go and get the ingredients and then make the meals, and then you deliver the meals to the judge or judges, as the case may be, and whoever has the highest score wins. The animation and performances could be a standalone anime on its own, and certainly wouldn't surprise me if they were able to sell that and turn it into an anime. I think they've got an interesting concept here, and the world to go along with it could be some fun. As the game progresses, and as the story progresses, more kind of obstacles get thrown into the meals, like poison or like chunks of bone, that if you match those up, they can be great for your meal, but if you leave them kind of isolated, they'll lower your score. And so they do a good job of elevating the difficulty of the game as you progress. Throw in a dash of RPG aspects, and Trinket Studios has really cooked up a fantastic dish here. And I realized as I was writing the end of this that I really should have been doing that cooking metaphor the whole time. Number 9, Pyre. Pyre was another interesting genre mashup in 2017. It's been on my radar since it was announced right before PAX East 2016, and I especially liked it after I got to go hands-on with it at RTX last year. It continues Supergiant Games' history of incorporating great art and sound design into their games while also reinventing the kinds of games they make each year, because you had Transistor, it was very different from Bastion, and Pyre is now different from both of them, in that it is much more of a narrative choose-your-own-adventure game with like this weird fantastical sports element as well. If you're unfamiliar, you play as the Reader, who is in exile in this world with the ability to read and read the stars, and with that knowledge you can determine the location of these sacred rites, which play out as a very high fantasy twist on 3v3 basketball. Each team of 3 has a pyre that they have to basically defend, as well as there is an orb in the game, the celestial orb, that a player can grab, and basically you're trying to either dunk or shoot it into the opponent's flame to douse their flame a little bit and bring the hit points down. And whoever is able to fully douse their opponent's pyre is the winner. Now, when you're holding that celestial orb, you lose this like magical defense aura around you, so if anybody else's aura hits you, you get banished temporarily, like a penalty box kind of thing. Also, if you like dunk the orb into the pyre, that player will be out of commission until the next score happens on one of the pyres. Essentially, you can bypass that temporary banishment if you shoot the ball into the pyre, but in that case, the other team has a better chance of intercepting it, or you might just miss. So it's a higher risk, high reward kind of functionality. It's all very convoluted to explain, but it fits perfectly and flows very well as the game kind of doles it out to you. As for the story, as your party grows, each member of your team is going to have different auras and different abilities, allowing you to mix and match playstyles. And as you complete the rites, you're going to kind of come upon a series of effectively championship rites, where the winner, instead of getting a trophy, gets to send one of their party members away from banishment. You get basically returned from exile to the land of the affluent. Now, it's great for your party because you're basically giving them the happy ending, but you end up losing them as a player in these games. So it's another trade-off where you have to figure out, okay, who do I want to live without versus who do I want to send up back to the free world. And as the game progresses, you start to discover and learn that, oh, you're not going to be able to there aren't going to be enough rights to send everybody back. So it ends up being this kind of tragic tale where some people are going to have to stay behind. And one of the really amazing things is how dynamic the team is in kind of doling this out. There really isn't a fail screen kind of thing. When you get to those competitions, if your opponents win, they get sent up. And so you won't necessarily face that team anymore, but you will... your players will still be there in exile, and the story kind of twists and turns to accommodate that. Lastly, when you're done with the story, you can always go back in and just play the 1v1 kind of multiplayer with a friend or against the AI, and it's just a ton of fun. It's a great, fun little, quick, fast-paced sports game, fantasy basketball, effectively. A ton of fun. I highly recommend Pyre. Great music, great art design, as always, from Supergiant Games. Coming in at number 8 and continuing on with the indie-heavy top of this list, we have Golf Story. I didn't think at the beginning of this year that I would have put so much time into not one but 2 golf games, but I certainly did. Everybody's Golf was a ton of fun as well, but Golf Story's humor and RPG elements really helped it rise above the competition to land on this list. Playing out with a 16-bit era game design, Golf Story has you trying to return to the golfing scene after showing promise as a child before spending the next couple of decades living a humdrum life. And where other games might put you up on a pedestal as this amazing golfer with this innate ability, Golf Story just finds humor in completely, just repeatedly tearing you down, with nobody really taking you seriously, regardless of how many rounds of golf you end up winning or how many trick shots and little side quests you do for other people. Your coach is very slow to warm to you, the golf commentators treat you like a joke, and one of my favorite gags was when I won a tournament and my ex-wife came and took half of my winnings. Add in any number of other bizarre scenarios like facing down against undead skeletons and a werewolf murder mystery and senior citizen golf rap battles, and Golf Story is also probably the funniest game of anything on my top 10 list. Oh, and I also managed to get a hole-in-one in Golf Story, but never in Everybody's Golf, so Golf Story wins on the basis of making me feel like a good golfer as well. Number 7, Super Mario Odyssey. Now, there was a time when I was playing Super Mario Odyssey where it was as high as number 2 on my list. My number 1, spoilers, is Horizon Zero Dawn, has been there since March, and has been the game to beat all year. And in the midst of playing through Super Mario Odyssey, I was having so much fun with it, and it was rising up the ranks. And it only fell back down as I really reflected on what games really stood out to me this year, and what games I wanted this list to reflect. And for me, that was games that, for the most part, really blended gameplay with storytelling. And at the end of the day, the gameplay in Mario is a ton of fun, but the story is still lacking. It is still barely a step above from the "we're sorry, Mario, princess is in another castle" that we've been getting my entire life. The extra little bit that we get this time is that there's a unique wedding-themed item in every world we go to that Bowser is collecting on his way to his wedding. But again, that doesn't take anything away from Mario's gameplay, which does very much feel like the team said, hey, let's make a Super Mario 64 for the modern era. I had a great time playing through the various worlds, finding an overabundance of moons and purple coins in every little nook and cranny of the expertly designed levels. When I ended up putting the game down, I had collected, I believe, all of 6, but the 830-something objective-based moons. I'm never going to have the patience for that 100 volleyball hits. I made it up to 72 on my flight to Maryland for IP Extra Life and had to muffle the obscenities that would have surely gotten me detained by the authorities when we landed. But I did collect every purple coin and costume, and I earned enough coins to go ahead and buy the rest of the moons to get me up to 999, the cap of the game. I wrote in my best non-2017 games of 2017 piece that Lego Harry Potter had scratched the collectathon itch for me that I had in the middle of the year, and Super Mario Odyssey very much scratched that same itch to wind the year down. But it's probably something that I don't know that I'll ever feel compelled to really go back to. If I try picking it up in a couple years, I fear that I'd be compelled to collect everything again, and really, I think once is probably enough for me there. I would just be going through the motions at that point, and with over 800 moons to collect, it's just not as manageable as, say, hopping back into Super Mario 64 for a 120-star run. It's absolutely a great game, but as I looked at this list, there just were some games I wanted to recognize more. Coming in at number 6, we have Night in the Woods. Where Super Mario Odyssey is all about gameplay over story, Night in the Woods is all about story over gameplay. There really isn't too much in the way of gameplay for Mae Borowski outside of platforming around the town and talking to its citizens. There are a few stray rhythm game segments and the Demon Tower game within the game, but this is very much a narrative-driven game. And the themes that Night in the Woods hits on are really striking. In my review, I wrote about Mae as a self-centered jerk, a character that I love to hate. She and so many other characters in Possum Springs are flawed, but they're just trying to get through the day, like so many of us. The game addresses the themes of depression and quarter-life crisis head-on, and it's probably one of the best illustrations of the struggles facing rural towns in any medium that I've seen. Small-town America is dying in a global economy, and 2016 reflected that in the polls, with people turning to the man who told them he'd bring their jobs back and their way of life. There is a desperation for that shown in Night in the Woods that helped me better understand those disenfranchised members of society, even as I wanted to scream at them my belief that Trump doesn't care and certainly can't relate to their problems and was just telling them what they wanted to hear. And the fact that all of these themes are tackled through the use of charmingly animated, anthropomorphized animals is a brilliant approach to it because it disarms us. When 90% of animation is geared towards family-friendly content, the ones that address the family-unfriendly content stand out. It's why The Simpsons and South Park and Family Guy and now Rick and Morty found audiences and rose above everything else. Listening to a father address his insecurities about taking a low-wage job as a grocery store butcher resonates more when that father is a cat in glasses and a blue polo shirt, because we haven't seen it before. As someone who was sold on the game's art style, Night in the Woods' story snuck up on me in the best way possible, and so it lands at number 6 on this list. Number 5, Wolfenstein II: The New Colossus. Wolfenstein II was a game I needed in 2017. As a seemingly endless barrage of hate was thrown around in 2016 and 2017, and Nazis were once again given a megaphone in the public eye in America, every day made me angrier and angrier, with no real way to vent that frustration. I needed a game centered around the idea of making America Nazi-free again. Now, a lot has been said about the game's brutal difficulty balancing, and I initially thought that this was some kind of subtle statement to the effect of, yes, this will give you a catharsis you want by killing Nazis, but we want to make you, the player, have to work for it. But then I realized that that would go against the core of B.J. Blazkowicz, who has been killing Nazis since my childhood, so it really was just a seemingly antagonistic choice against the player, maybe trying to respect the series' roots as a more difficult game, who knows. But when you look past the subpar gameplay, Wolfenstein 2's story is fantastic. I get that a lot of people think they went too far with some of the game's big moments, but Wolfenstein has always been a series that has veered into over-the-top absurdity, ever since Mecha Hitler. But they do such a great job setting up BJ here that when these moments hit, I was invested and along for the ride. And yeah, I hated the zombies turn in the Old Blood expansion, so I recognize that I'm a little inconsistent in this area, but who cares? Now, I already touched on the fact that Wolfenstein II gave me one of my favorite moments of gaming in the year with the relationship between BJ and his father, but this is a game filled with great moments like that. The relationship between BJ and Anya is in a race for my favorite couple this year against Bayek and Aya from Assassin's Creed Origins. Walking through Nazi-occupied Roswell with Ku Klux Klan members out and about and then being berated by their Nazi occupiers is very surreal. You have the mission of flying to Venus and everything that happens out there, and the entirety of the courtroom scene and its aftermath, and of course the ending of the game. As an aside, it struck me that a lot of people really hated the end credits music, but I just kind of found it forgettable. Seriously, I haven't looked it up, and without doing so, I couldn't tell you what the song was. I remember that it was one of those, like, slowed-down cover songs of a contemporary or, something from, like, the 80s to contemporary kind of song, but I'm also just kind of numb to that anyway, after seeing, movie trailer after movie trailer of Sweet Dreams played extra slow and in a minor chord or something like that. So I didn't even notice it here, really. But with so many great moments in this game and the inherent catharsis that it gave me, Wolfenstein II: The New Colossus lands at number 5 on my list. Number 4, Destiny 2. At the beginning of the year, Destiny wasn't even on my radar. It wasn't officially announced until March, but everybody knew it was coming. And as the year went on, nothing really won me over to it. I didn't care. I was one of the people who had basically bounced at vanilla Destiny. I didn't come back for the Taken King. I had no intent of coming back for Destiny 2. But then I got interested in the prospect of having actual friends to play it with. I'd been burned by that before with Overwatch and the couple hours I ended up putting into that game, but at least with Destiny 2, I knew more or less that I would enjoy the gameplay, the gunplay of the experience, and just not worry about the characters or story all that much. And yet here I am, continuing to play the game long after everybody else I know has bounced from it. And yeah, Bungie and Activision have absolutely shat the bed on pretty much everything about the microtransactions and community engagement with this game. But it sucked me in nonetheless. Destiny 2 is a great time-waster game for me. As the year wound down, I didn't have the urge to hop into something new like Nier or Dishonored: Death of the Outsider, despite really wanting to play both of those games. Telltale's Batman or Life is Strange Before the Storm felt like they'd be too heavy to dive into, but with Destiny 2 I could just hop into it for an hour after work and recording my daily video and just kind of going through my whole routine. I could run a handful of public events, or some Crucible matches, or some heroic strikes, and get rewarded for it as I inch towards the cap power level. Before the Curse of Osiris expansion, I had managed to get all 3 of my characters up to the 305 level cap, and as of this recording, all 3 of my characters are sitting above 330 on the way to the 335 level cap. The worst part might be that I actually did get the taste of playing with my friends this year. I absolutely detested the raid when my group got together and first attempted it over our much maligned 17 hours across 2 days. But when we were all more leveled up, it became a much easier task, reaching Callus in only a couple hours. Callus is still an absolute piece of shit phase of the game because only like a simple mistake can completely force a wipe, and that's just bullshit. But still, I beat him once, and now I miss that I don't have people to play with to try and beat him again. Or to explore the newer raid content. Or even just run through the world and shoot at shit together. If I still had those regular friends to play with, it's entirely possible this game, which I never thought I would bother with, would be even higher on this list. At almost 250 hours, Destiny was easily the game I spent the most time with in 2017, and with more content still to come, I fully expect I'll still keep coming back to my number 4 game of 2017. Number 3, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Hellblade was my biggest out-of-nowhere game this year. I remember it getting announced and everyone cracking jokes about the Hellblade name being so thematically similar to their previous game Heavenly Sword, but then I forgot about the game entirely until a few days before it launched, people started hinting before the embargo broke that, hey, something really good's going to drop next week. And it dropped with almost no fanfare outside of the critical acclaim it was getting. It was very much a word-of-mouth kind of game. Now, as I'm recording this, I sat down a couple days ago and recorded a special discussion about the game for Irrational Passions with Logan Wilkinson and Jack Cruz, where we talked for about an hour and a half about how this game affected us. It was much fresher in their eyes, as they both played it more recently, but having played it around launch, there are still so many aspects of that game that have stayed with me. Most notably, I think, if played as intended with headphones that incorporate the game's stereoscopic soundscape, this game has arguably the best sound design the medium has ever seen. The way the game uses the voices in Senua's head by planting them into your own through that design is as immersive and viscerally unsettling as anything I've ever experienced in a video game. The fact that it carries with you into every other aspect of the game, from the puzzles to the combat, elevates what would feel like an otherwise maybe pedestrian hack and slash into something special. The voices routinely insult and berate you, as anybody with depression can relate to, but hearing them also tell you to watch out as a cue that an enemy is attacking you from behind is a genius way to incorporate it, because they're out to save themselves as well. They contradict each other and really make the idea of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder relatable in a way that no other medium can really accomplish. Senua herself is one of the most fascinating characters of 2017, if not all of gaming, because she suffers all of this and still fights on. Even today, we have a hard time talking about and addressing mental health issues, and in Senua's time, she was suffering from a darkness that got her mother burned alive. But Senua fights into the mouth of hell itself for something she believes in, battling herself and the gods on the way in equal measure. She is simultaneously vulnerable and fierce, and a lot of that is a testament to Melina Juergen's honest and unbridled portrayal of this character. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice told one of the most powerful stories of the year, if not the entire medium, and earns my number 3 spot. Number 2, Persona 5. Persona 5 is bigger and better in virtually every way over the already phenomenal Persona 4 Golden. There will be an eternal debate over which cast of characters is better, but it all comes down to personal preference at the end of the day, just like the age-old who is best girl debate that will tear friendships apart. Personally, with the Persona 4 cast being my first, it's impossible not to compare the Shujin Academy crew with the Yasagami High gang, and I wind up giving Persona 4 the edge there. However, for me, it's the non-party members that really stand out in Persona 5 over their Persona 4 counterparts, with the obvious exceptions of Dojima and Nanako. So overall, Persona 5 gets the edge for me. There were only a few confidant stories that really didn't resonate with me, but even in those cases, the support abilities that you earn from these relationships more than make up for it. In addition, the world is so much bigger here than anything we had in Persona 4 Golden, as this game takes place in and around the Shibuya area instead of the quieter, calmer Inaba region. And this bigger world is absolutely filled to the brim with style. The music is fantastic, and after 200 hours across 2 playthroughs, never managed to drive me insane. The art direction is vibrant, and even the menus, be it in the stores or the main menu or the combat, are all memorable and unique. Combat itself is taken to the next level as well, with guns adding a new physical element to the attacks, or new elemental attacks like psionic and nuclear attacks adding a much wider variety both in your party's attacks as well as the enemy types that you face. And I very much enjoyed the new mechanic of sparing personas to bring them into your fold, even if trying to determine which answer props got the desired results felt a little bit arbitrary and obtuse, but it worked way better than the occasional card system that its predecessor had for me. The randomly generated dungeon levels of Persona 4 Golden are replaced here by specifically designed palaces for each victim of our phantom thieves, with the additional Mementos dungeon still also filling that role of randomized dungeon for level grinding if need be. If I had one complaint from the game, it was that I felt there was probably one party member and palace too many, but I also recognized that thematically they needed 7 in order to really explore the 7 deadly sins symbolism. But fatigue definitely started hitting me by the end game as a result. It didn't stop me from hopping right back in, however, and playing through the game a second time to see all the side stories I had missed the first time around. Persona 5's characters, combat, style, and story all combined to land at number 2 on my list. And finally, number 1, Horizon Zero Dawn. As mentioned earlier and often throughout the year, Horizon Zero Dawn was my game to beat as soon as I finished it. And while other games came close at times, nothing was able to top this exceptional game from Guerrilla. Horizon Zero Dawn is a game that is firing on all cylinders. Combat is fluid and dynamic. Taking down the game's wide variety of machine enemies was always fun and rewarding, and the ability to change weapons and heal myself on the fly meant I didn't have to constantly hop into menus, unlike some other open-world game with a bow and arrow-clad protagonist. Not only did the game provide a variety of weapon types, but also you had a variety of ammo types on top that could come in handy depending on the situation. As I touched on in my Best Moments of 2017 post, using my Tear Blast arrows to deftly rip the disc launchers off of the back of a Thunderjaw and then grabbing those disc launchers and taking it down was always immensely satisfying. As was the sensation of shooting precision arrows into the gullets or sacks of bellowbacks and watching them explode with their given element. For every enemy, really, I found a strategy that put a smile on my face every time I took one down. Next up, we had the world of Horizon Zero Dawn. There were some pretty clear signs going into the game indicating that this was some kind of far-off future, but it was still our world, and these machine creatures had risen up while we had regressed into this more tribal nature. So I was very eager to see where in the world we might be taking place and how we got there. When I started stumbling into landmarks and collectibles in the environment that set it in the Colorado and Utah region of the US, I became very excited. In part because I couldn't recall much in the way of other games really centering around those regions, but also because it's so close to my own home base in Arizona. And maybe if I'm really lucky, they'll set Horizon 2 in Arizona and New Mexico, that kind of region. Also, the sky really here feels like an Arizona sky. I've been incredibly blessed living here that we get some phenomenal sunsets and sunrises, and Horizon is the first game I can really remember that gave me the same level of those vibrant colors that we get in those moments, the purples and reds and oranges streaking across the sky. It's a little thing, but I absolutely loved it. But aside from that, the world feels rich and lived in and full of things to do. As for how the world became that way, I absolutely loved the story. Aloy, as a central character, is an ideal entry point into this world for us as the player because she's been an outcast for her whole life. So she's learning the ins and outs of the various tribes and societies at the same time we are. And on top of that, she's also trying to uncover the mystery surrounding her own birth and past, which winds up tying in so intricately with the story that we end up uncovering about the old world and the events that led to the current world. I'm a sucker for games that manage to tell stories over multiple timelines in this way, through the main game's narrative thrust as well as collectibles that you can find around the world. Uncharted 4: Thief's End was a great example of this, showing us not only Nate and Sam's adventure, but also we got to see kind of Avery's adventure through the environment, as well as another expedition that took place in between those two eras, trying to find Avery's treasure. And Horizon manages to give us this same balance, giving us an in-depth look at Aloy in the present day, the journey of Elizabeth Sobek as the driving force in the past, as well as a completely optional and brilliant story about Bashar Mati, a guy who's revisiting some of his favorite places and reflecting on his life at the end of the world if you go and search through the vantage points in the game. The late-year expansion of the Frozen Wilds gave a wonderful human side story to Aloy's tale and continued to expand the lore of this world, and it was a great reason to hop back into the game and remind me why it was standing tall as my #1 game of 2017. So that's my list. Let me know what yours are in the comments or on Twitter. Thanks for a great 2017, and let's look ahead to a great 2018 as well. As always, I've been your host, Trevor Starkey from TrevorTrove.com. You can follow me at SnarkyStarkey on Twitter. You can read the full rundown of all 10 of these games at the link in the description below, or find all of my Game of the Year content over at TrevorTrove.com. Thank you for tuning into my Game of the Year content, and as always, from here at the Trove, treasure your friends.